us now, a combat veteran, the Gulf War era, and I call him an all-around badass, retired Navy EOD, member of the 777 Expedition Lead, and a professional skydiver who is in France right now helping to honor and commemorate the greatest generation, Nick Kush. And Nick threw this at me. Another veteran is joining him last minute here, former Navy SEAL and Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Both two gentlemen that if I were ever in a foxhole, I'd want covering my six. Gentlemen, the greatest generation. We owe them, the world owes them more than we can ever articulate. Would you both agree with that?
Definitely. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
Well, I love seeing veterans of different wars there honoring the men that fought the greatest war, the greatest generation, because we all know in a few years, there won't be any of them left. They're all in their 90s or 100, and we can never let their memory die because let's face it, the world would look different if it weren't for literally 16, 17, 18-year-olds that signed up, many of them not drafted, signed up to go fight Hitler, the Japanese, to save the world. It's different than the war you guys fought, but no disrespect. Times were different, equipment was different. I mean, you guys know it. That is the greatest generation, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. Go ahead. This is your interview. I just popped in like.
Well, no, agreed. I mean, those guys were arguably our founding fathers, and inspired us to basically take the fight overseas into the enemy. And being here during this time today of all days, it is pretty sentimental and nostalgic for us to see and experience the support, not only from the Americans that came out here, but also from the French, the Belgium, the people from Belgium and Canada and the UK to come out and really be sentimental for everything that's going on out here. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is, Nick. Dan, you do a lot of stuff with youth in your district and around the country. Do you think that younger Americans these days, because let's be real, things have changed a bit in the education system, do you think a lot of young folks actually understand the gravity of what young American men went and did back in the 40s to liberate an entire world almost?
Well, the obvious answer is no, they don't. As a country, forget about young people. Let's ask the question differently. Let's ask about everyone in America, and the answer is still no. There's a lack of perspective in America that is extremely concerning to me. Everybody thinks they have it the worst they've ever had it, right? And the truth is, you've had it the best that anyone has ever had it.
Thank you.
And the reason is, for the past 80 years, the reason that you can have whatever item, product you want on your doorstep in like 2 seconds, it's because the last 80 years have been led by America, because those Americans that are on your screen right now, those men who died on those beaches, decided to say, we're going to lead the world now, and we're going to say no more wars of conquest, no more everybody screwing things up. America's going to lead, and our people are going to prosper. And that's exactly what's happened for the last 80 years, and we would be crazy to forget that.
Amen. So well said. Thank you, Congressman. Nick, did you tell me before you went on, are you guys, you're not, because you're a skydiver, you're not doing a traditional jump tomorrow that we did last Memorial Day here in San Diego. You guys are going to do the static line like they did in the 40s. Is that correct? And out of a vintage aircraft? Tell me about what you're doing tomorrow to commemorate.
Yeah, so with the round canopy parachute team based out of Placa, Florida, they've been doing this for several years. And so they do basically a commemorative jump or a series of jumps at multiple drop zones throughout the Normandy area. And so Dan and I are both jumping into Mount Saint Michel tomorrow afternoon and in the evening to commemorate basically D-Day and the parachutists and the airborne that jumped into France.
I love that. Guys, I'll give you a final word on what it was like, because I got to admit, as a vet also and a patriot, I'm jealous. I've never been there. I don't know if this was you guys' first time or multiple times you've been there. Yeah. I'd love to be there before these guys are gone, because my goodness, I mean, I just feel, I get, the hairs on my hands stand up. I get chills. I get weepy-eyed just listening to these men talk, because they're men of men. They don't bitch and gripe and complain. They just got the job done, and they still don't today, 80 years later. So guys, final words to you about meeting and seeing these men of men at this ceremony this year, 80 years later. Nick, Dan.
Absolutely moving. It helps restore my hope in humanity to be able to see what these guys have gone through, and not only the guys that are still around and still with us, but everybody else honoring the legacy of what their fallen comrades went through, as well as themselves and their family members. So it's pretty absolutely remarkable. And Dan, I highly recommend it within the next year or two, making the pilgrimage out here for sure.
Yes, agreed. Mr. Crenshaw, Congressman.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do. We'll be parachuting out of here. We'll be wearing this uniform. I'm in full uniform the whole time out here. And, you see these guys. And I read a diary entry from one of them on the House floor earlier this week, where he talked about being the second wave into Omaha Beach and avoiding dead bodies as he ran to cover and then ran to the Germans and then made them surrender. We saw here in the town we're at right now, the chapel, where Private John Steele landed on the top of the chapel, got captured by Germans, escaped 4 hours later, reunited with his unit, came back to the town, liberated it, killed a bunch of Germans. And you know what? America. Like that's what we're talking about. So
yes.
These guys are just so unbelievable.
Yes, they are unbelievable. I love that. Again, you got the hairs, the chills coming just from that story. See, folks, this is what we need more of. This is what we need more of. Please, for the love of God and country, can we remember these heroes who sacrificed to give us everything we have today and continue to fight for that? Because right now in 2024, folks, let's face it, this ain't the America they all fought and died for. Nick Crenshaw, retired Navy EOD, Congressman and former Navy, or Nick Kush, sorry, I got my names wrong today.
We're not married. Stop it, Dan.
Listen, I got COVID brain
fog. I know
fog.
It's Pride Month, but for God's sake, give it a break over at OAN.
I got COVID brain fog this week, Crenshaw, okay?
What?
Former Navy SEAL
ago.
And Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw, and former EOD who worked with Navy SEALs, Nick Kush. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the program. Make sure you sleep in separate rooms tonight. All right, gentlemen, take care. God bless. Sometimes I screw it up too.